Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to start by thanking Tamir for the invitation to come and speak to you here today. This is my second time in Dubai, and it's a city that I love very much. Originally, I was born in Iran. To give you a bit of a story about my background, I was born in a city called Sanandaj on the northwest part of Iran in 1984. I was born at a time where there was war. It was a time when Iran and Iraq were unfortunately in a heavy war that started in 1980, and by the time I was born, it was starting to get really, really bad. There was bombings, cities and people were dying, cities were being blown up, and some of my first memories of life was being in those wars. And actually, one of my first memories was my mum and my uncle escaping the city whilst holding me in their arms. We managed to escape, and a few years later we came back to the city and found the city had been destroyed, and my home was actually destroyed. A bomb had landed nearby, and all the windows, the building, everything had been destroyed. So my childhood home had disappeared. The war ended in 1988. And of course, it took many years for the city to start rebuilding itself. In 1994, we decided to move and join the rest of my family, my grandparents, etc., in London, where we settled in North West London, more exactly in Ladbroke Grove area of Royal Borough of Kensington, Chelsea. 1997, I moved to Grenfell Tower, where I lived with my mum and my brother ever since. On the 14th of June, something really unbelievable happened. A building in the middle of the second richest borough on the planet went up in flames whilst I was at a training course for my job. My mum was home alone, and I received a call at 1 a.m. from my dear friend and a neighbor of mine saying to get out the building, the building is on fire. It was the most horrific thing I'd ever heard. And I'd been through quite a bit in my childhood. My heart pounded, and all I could say was, please go and get my mum out of the tower, please make sure that she's okay. I jumped into my car and I drove as fast as I could to get to Grenfell Tower. Before I tell you the rest of the story, I want to tell you a little bit about Grenfell Tower. On the left picture is Grenfell Tower as it looked when I moved in. Grenfell Tower is 24 stories high, and it was a residential building that accommodated for the community. It actually had a gym, it had offices, and it was a breathable working community within the richest part of Kensington, Chelsea. However, the surrounding area was rich, but the building itself and the immediate part of that area that it was in was for social housing, and it was for the working class. Now, a stone's throw away, we have Kensington Palace, where Prince William and Kate live, and we have rich billionaires, oil tycoons from Russia that also live. And this is literally about a stone's throw away from Grenfell Tower. They decided to do some refurbishments in Grenfell Tower because what they wanted to do was to make sure that the tower looked modern, it was pleasing to the eye, and so the people living in the area had something beautiful to look at. Unfortunately, the tower needed a bit more than just looking pretty. It needed a lot more work inside. It needed some safety features. It needed some investment, a very small amount of the 10 million that they had in store for the refurbishment. It just needed about $500,000 to be spent on the safety features. But unfortunately, with budgets and with people that crunch numbers, they decided, you know what, let's cut some costs and let's make sure that we can keep it within budget
And we'll go through a few lists of contractors that we can get to do this building for us before we actually decide to make it safe for the people that live in it, because it was their responsibilities. There was a group of community workers and community residents that lived in that tower that fought very hard. They emailed, they sent letters, they attended scrutiny meetings, they went to the council and the government, and they said, please make sure that you scrutinize and you look after these people, because the safety of the building is under threat. The work that's being carried out is being done cheaply. There are people making money under the table, and there are things happening that need your attention, because many, many lives living in that tower depend on you to make sure it's done safely and properly. Unfortunately, the council, the government, the scrutiny, the responsible people, the people earning a wage to look after others, did not listen, and they just went ahead and ignored those people, in fact starting to alienate them, calling them troublemakers and saying these people are causing problems for the community and they are not a strong part of this community. They alienated these people, these good people that are fighting very hard for the community. Luckily, Grenfell Action Group and its writers were blogging everything, writing on a website, keeping a track of all the emails, making sure that they were putting everything on the internet so they could keep a track of all the fight that they were going through, and trying to enlist more people to help, to make sure the people that have something to lose actually take notice that there are more and more people listening and viewing these blogs. They even went as far as to say that you are putting the safety of people at risk, and it will take a tremendous fire and a great loss of life before you realize the mistakes, the culture of indifference that we are living in. On the right is what you have the building when it finished in 2016. Beautiful, but on the inside there were gas pipes that were left unsafe. The material used was flammable, and the people that lived in that tower were very unhappy about the way they were being treated. The worst night of my life was when I received that phone call, realizing that my mum's life was in danger. I drove as fast as I could. About 1.5 hours I was away from the tower, in a hotel where I was staying for my training course. By the time I had got to the tower, it was too late. However, I was being sent footage by my neighbours to tell me this is what was going on. As you can see on the 4th floor of the tower, there was some fire that started. Very normal, fires happen in buildings and building blocks. In fact, in Grenfell, we had fires, probably 2 fires in the last 15 years. A whole flat burnt to crisp, absolutely unrecognizable, no loss of life, and no spread of fire. However, this is after refurbishment, after the cheap material that's been used and the unsafe way that the building was redesigned. This is footage unseen by anyone in the world, except our community, of the fire brigade at 1:10 a.m. on the 14th of June, trying to tackle what was a very ordinary fire. The fire's coming out the window because the fridge went on fire, the curtains caught aflight, people started to evacuate the apartment. However, it didn't go off. The fire was just going. It was rapidly developing and engulfing the whole building. This is a time frame to show you how fast this fire started to take over this building. It was literally like someone had poured gasoline over the whole building and then just set it alight, and the whole building just started going up. Within a matter of an hour, you can see that the fire has gone all the way up the side and started to move across the whole building. I got to the tower around 2:30. So when I got there, I had to park far away, and I saw this, my whole tower, somewhere that I called my home, where all my things were, where all my neighbours were, all of their possessions, all of my possessions, all of my family's possessions, children, elderly, disabled people, people that saw me grow up, people that I had seen grow up, were in there. And this whole building was in fire. As you can see, this was an unstoppable fire. There was nothing that could be done. All of the fire brigade and all of their efforts could not stop this flammable building being set up. By 5:15, 96 flats had been totally engulfed. The building was unrecognizable, and it took 25 hours for the fire to be put out. The aftermath was one of the worst things to happen in London since World War II. 71 souls lost, 65 people injured with life-changing injuries, burns from the flammable material on the building that shouldn't have been there in the first place, falling on them as they were trying to escape, lung damage from breathing in the poison, and 256 survivors. That's life has changed forever. Me, my wife, my mum, and my brother, 4 of those survivors. What was incredible after experiencing what I had experienced on that night, I had got there and seen a community shattered, people traumatized beyond belief. I had just experienced for the second time in my life, my home being destroyed. It was a community that brought us together. It was people that came out of their homes, that got tea, water, nappies, blankets, whatever they could. It was Ramadan, so lucky for us, lucky for the survivors. There were so many young Muslims and older Muslims that were out that night because of Ramadan. They were there on the scene, helping right from the beginning. 6 a.m., the community groups in the area, community centers, people that were a backbone of that community, opened their doors to the community centers and started to make sure that people were all right. It was the most incredible thing because there was about 2,000 people that had come out of their homes and were helping, doing whatever they could for the people of that tower. I went around trying to find my neighbors that had young children, and I just wanted to make sure that they were all right. Some I found, and some I found that had not been able to get out. But it wasn't a time for tears. It wasn't a time for letting a tragedy like this, ruin your life and change your life forever. It was a time for people, and I being one of them, to stand up and to say, from this day, we're going to do things differently in our lives. We're going to make sure that instead of just concentrating on our careers, living our life blind to everything that's going on around us, from this day, I'm going to be one of those people that's fighting for my community. I'm going to be one of those people that's caring for other people, and not only for myself and my life and my career and my job, and making sure that I'm going after these things that really don't mean anything. Because when you go through something like this, you realize how important it is that you are a part of a society and a part of a community that's helping each other, bringing each other together, strengthening the people around you, galvanizing a community to do better work, to look after each other and look after yourselves. It was this community that came out and supported us, that inspired myself and some other survivors to start fighting. Literally 2 days after the fire, we started to come together and we formed a united front, a voice, to start asking the government questions like, why are you not here helping? Where is this great nation's support in this such a tragic time? Where is the local council, the same people responsible for letting us be in this situation? Where are they right now? Why is it young people running around giving water? Where is someone with a high-vis and a pad, taking names, giving answers, making sure people are put into hotels, they have food, they have things sorted, they have some clothes for the night and they're looked after? Why are they not here? Why are they telling us on the news that 6 people died? And excuse me for saying this, but I've already walked past 30 body bags on the morning of the fire. Why is the news lying to us, or what we thought was lying to us at the time? Because what we realized is they had to go through an identity process. They had to identify the bodies before they could actually pronounce them dead. But we didn't know that at the time because no one was there. No one was there from the officials or anyone to tell us this is what's going on and things will hopefully get better. So it's up to us to come together and start fighting for answers, start fighting for truth, find out what happened, find out who's responsible, to find out how we can get people rehoused. What are their needs? Do they need a special disability clearance for their home? You can't just ask them to go and live in on the 4th floor if they've just been traumatized because they were hanging out of a building, deciding whether they wanted to jump to escape the fire, or do they wanted to die in the fire or from the smoke. You can't expect them to, now that they've been saved, make a decision like that. You have to make sure you nurture people, you look after people, you treat them with humanity, not just as numbers, not just as 256 survivors, but actually 256 individuals with individual needs that need to be met. We formed something called Grenfell United. It was only to be run by survivors or bereaved family members that had lost someone in the fire. And I'm proud to say that the inspiration came from when I met on the 2nd day of the fire, the same person that was the co-author of the Grenfell Action Group that was fighting for us before the fire. Whilst I was busy with my career and my life, he was the one typing away and writing those emails and writing that email to the government that said it will take a massive loss of life through a tragic fire before you start realizing that this building is unsafe. And man, was he right. He is now the co-chair of Grenfell United, and I am the chairman of Grenfell United. For the last 9 months, we've been working hard to bring people to account, to bring people together, to find healing. And some of the amazing things that we've been able to do by galvanizing the community, by fighting austerity, by making sure that people were not left to be disfranchised and were actually looked after by the people that are earning a wage to look after them. We've met with people like the ministers. We've met with the Prime Minister of UK, Theresa May, about 3-4 times. And we continue to meet them daily, weekly, to make sure that we get to answers and we learn how we can continue to move in a better direction. To improve is to change. To be perfect is to change often. By Winston Churchill. This is such an important saying because it's something that we have learned in the last 9 months. That is that people need to continue to change what they think. If we stay in the same mentality, we will never improve. We have to be open-minded, we have to be open to new ideas, and we have to make sure that we force people responsible and accountable for the well-being of society, people that stand in government, people that stand in important positions are open to these new ideas, because we want to have a change in our society in the UK. We want to make sure that no one ever has to go through what we went through. No one should lose their family in a fire that could have so easily been avoided if only they spent $500,000, just $500,000 in that 10 million on making sure that people were safe. We call it institutional indifference. And it's like institutional racism that was founded to be a problem in the UK in the 70s. And we are fighting to make sure that institutional indifference becomes a known thing within the UK, to make sure corporations and governments and their relationships are tracked and scrutinized, to make sure that people, common people, everyday people living in their homes can feel safe again, can feel safe to be in your own home. Something I've personally learned is there's no limit to what you can accomplish, except the limit that you place on your own thinking. I'm astounded by the people in that community that came together and, with the help from important thinkers within our society, started to come up with ideas of how we can help each other. They've taught me so much about politics, about science, about community, about engagement, about being able to forget about my limitations and start thinking about a clarity of my vision. It takes only one person to ignite many people to think about how they can better themselves and the people around them. I ask of you today, if there's one thing you take away from this, do not just live your life thinking that someone else will look after the problems. Even if it's just signing a petition, or every now and then checking up on some websites and things like BOLDtalks, which brings these issues to light, keep up to date and do what you can to help other people that may not have the ability to voice their concerns like you can. Thank you very much.